And there we go. We are live across the networks on TikTok, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you want to watch this. We are there. The Maple Leafs are making moves. I wouldn't call it a direct response to what Tampa Bay just did by getting Tanner Jeannot for their pretty much entire draft class. But we want to break it down with someone who's in the know, and that is Mr. Terry Koshan. Terry, I know you're not with us on video, but you are here via the phone. What's going on?
Hey, good to see you, or good to talk to you guys. Yeah, not sure what's happening there, but better this than nothing, I guess, right? So here we
go. Good to have you here, Terry. Good to have you. Now, I guess let's get right into it. Like, what are your thoughts on today's trade?
Well, it's a good one. First of all, the Leafs get a couple players who are going to be here for a while and make that sort of impact that we're expecting, I think. Jake McCabe, a lot of good things for Chicago at 5-on-5 guys on a team that we know was terrible. And Sam Lafferty's a good energy player who will not only bring that sort of flavor to the Leafs bottom six, but a scoring touch as well. And, I guess the initial reaction is, okay, well, this is kind of a response to Tampa, if you want to call it that. But, Jim was telling us today that this was in the works before Tampa acquired Tanner Jeannot from the Nashville Predators. So the Leafs have had their eye on McCabe for a while. This goes back to the summer of 21 when he was a free agent, and there were discussions with him. We've heard Lafferty's name at other points during the winter. So I think it's a good deal. As I wrote today, it's commend Kyle Dubas because they've added 4 players in the past 10 days, 4 guys who can make an impact in the playoffs, and they haven't taken one person off the current roster. And I think that that is some shrewd work by the GM. Now that's today. That's the end of February. We'll see what happens mid-April and beyond. But I think if you're a Leafs fan, there's a lot to like what's happened here in the last little while.
No, definitely. Well, the key thing there is no one off the active roster. But then that begs the question, Terry. Obviously, we'll get into more minutia of the deals here, but doesn't that mean that someone does have to be traded off the active roster or put on LTIR or something to make all of this work? Or what are the Leafs planning to do here?
Well, Matt Murray is going to come off LTIR this week. I mean, Dubas reiterated that today. That was the thinking when the team headed out west to Sheldon Keefe. And, once he does, then obviously that type of cash isn't available for them. But, Dubas is, taking a wait-and-see approach. As he reminded us, Rasmus Sandin was hurt last year in Nashville, didn't play the rest of the year. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that injury came 2 days before the deadline or around there. It was awfully close. So, Dubas' word to us today, guys. Well, let's get through the games in Edmonton and Calgary. There's time to make these decisions. It's not like the deadline's coming tomorrow afternoon. It's not till Friday. So, those things will come. Now, you look at the depth that the Leafs have now, really a lot more at forward than they had in Achari and Lafferty. And, I'd include Ryan O'Reilly in that because I don't see the depth players a lot more than that. But so they have 3 forwards there. So does that make somebody like a Pierre Engvall or an Alex Kerfoot who are on expiring contracts expendable in the next few days? And then you get some of that money, out the door. We'll have to see. But I don't think Dubas is done yet, if that's what you're getting at overall. I think that there's still probably something else coming down here in the next 72 hours. But, as it stands, no matter what happens in the next few days, the heavy lifting, if you will, is done. And the Maple Leafs are going to be a better hockey team going forward than they were 10 days ago.
Gotcha. Now, Terry, we have a bunch of viewers. They don't really know what Jake McCabe's about. Can you give us, or even Sam Lafferty, can you give us a brief rundown of what these guys can bring to the Leafs?
Well, he's going to bring you guys know the Leafs needed or wanted that person to come in, whatever defenseman they're going to get, to take and do some of the things that Jake Muzzin would have done had he been healthy. And I think that's how they look at Jake McCabe. Play with a bit of an edge to his game. Play with some defensive responsibility. Just have that presence about him in the defensive zone. As Dude was saying to us today, he's a guy that spent most of the season playing with Seth Jones, and some of the underlying numbers look good on a not good Blackhawks team. So, just some stability. I think he's going to get into be a top 4 player. I don't have it right in front of me, but he was near 20 minutes a game with the Blackhawks. So, I'm curious to see how this all works out from the vantage point of Sheldon Keefe and Dean Schnuth now and what they do with the defense core. A lot of options for them. Keefe's had a lot of options at forward, as he's been saying, with O'Reilly and Achari. Well, now he's got quite a few pieces to move around on the blue line with the addition of McCabe. But I just think he'll bring that part of it. He's 29. He hasn't played an NHL playoff game, so there is that. And the Leafs are well aware of it, but they just think he'll bring some of that presence that, like I say, they would have had had Jake Muzzin been healthy right now.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing that I think that a lot of Leaf fans were hoping for was the Leafs to either get Jake Muzzin back for the playoffs if he was healthy, or B, to get someone who's comparable to him. And I look at Jake McCabe and I say that's a guy that definitely can do it. Going to wear Luke Schen's old number, a number 2. I'm pretty fired up about this deal. I mean, I've been beating the Lafferty drum for a little while, and then the Noel Achari and the Ryan O'Reilly. I talked to you about that, September. So, I mean, that was something that I wanted, and everybody was kind of like, well, it's St. Louis. They're not going anywhere, and they always think they got a chance. But the Leafs make that other deal. And I want to ask you, you look at the deal that Tampa just made, basically giving up all of their draft capital for Tanner Jeannot. And I mean, I made the joke, and it is funny, a draft pick for each goal because it looked that way. Do you think that Tampa overpaid for Tanner Jeannot, or was it just paying the piper for the guy that you want?
No, as I said about the Leafs and the way they look today, they're better today, but we have to wait for the playoffs to see how that plays out. It's the same thing in Tampa. I can say today, right now, guys, that Tampa overpaid. If they're hoisting the Stanley Cup in the middle of June, which is possible, then you can come back and strike these remarks and say that they didn't, because presumably you know what to do with that, whatever that role might be. So it's hard to say right now. You don't know too either, because you don't know what those picks are going to become. Like Cal Foote, I guess, has a future in the NHL. There is some thought that he could be a good defenseman at some point and a little more reliable than he has been. But the fact of the matter is you just don't know. And if you're a guy like Julien Brisebois, who has been there, done that, you have a fairly good idea of what it takes to win. If I'm a Lightning fan, I love the confidence of my GM, because it also says, that we expect to win now, period. And the Boston Bruins are there. We all know what's going on in the Metro with the Rangers, the Devils, the Hurricanes, and what their capabilities are. But it's hard to say. Is it Tampa? On paper, last night gave up a hell of a lot. We know that. But those picks have to become something years from now, and by then, who knows? But if Tampa goes far in the playoffs this year and wins the Cup again, I don't think those things will matter. And same for the Leafs too. I mean, Kyle Dubas has probably given up more draft picks in the last little while than he would have probably hoped. But I think the other thing we got to talk about too, guys, is, and maybe we're going to get to it, is not only is he not delete off the current roster yet, he still could by Friday, but all of these players going out the door are not high-end prospects. All due respect to Abramov going to St. Louis, and I don't even count Godak. He wasn't going to play for Leafs anyway. And the two that went out today, and Joey Anderson and Pavel Gogolev, they're not high-end prospects for the Leafs. They were probably never going to do anything more than what Anderson was doing, which was fighting like crazy to have a fourth-line spot. So also commend Dubas for that, but we'll see what becomes the first-round pick and everything. But it's getting back to the Tampa. I guess today, like I said, on paper, it's a lot, but if they're lifting the cup again, it won't matter.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping the bell rings true this year, that maybe Tampa finally is a little tired, and maybe the Leafs get to take advantage of that fact. But we never know. Tampa seems to save the gas for the playoffs. I will ask you this question: we look at the lineup here, and there's another player that a lot of people are clamoring for. You just talked about top prospects not leaving, and that is one Matthew Nyes. There's a lot of people who think that he may have an impact on this roster. Do you see him coming in and playing for the Leafs this year, or are they going to slowly bring him along?
Well, it's not the Leafs' history to rush anybody. It's not Dubas's. And not so much what Dubas said today, because he told us today he was in Minnesota over the weekend, guys, and he saw Nyes play and is really happy with the development that he's had in his sophomore year, and more than a point a game again, and everything else, and the hope there that they win the Big Ten and then go on to win the Frozen Four in Tampa in April. I'll take you back to what Kyle Dubas said a few weeks ago when he said, let's temper this a bit on Matthew Nyes. Expecting him to come in and make an impact right away upon signing April 10th or whenever it might be, you're asking for a lot.
Yep.
You're asking for a lot. You're asking for a lot. And listen, I know that he's a big kid. He's 6'3", 10. Does so many things well. It's one thing to do so many things well and dominate in the NCAA. It's quite another to come and make a real impact in the National Hockey League. Not only in the NHL, but to do it at a time when, guys are going to be bumped and bruised and all that sort of thing, but do it at a time when everyone's going 100% as far as the speed goes and into the playoffs and the intensity and everything else. So I'm curious to see how that all plays out. Whether he gets up here a little bit sooner, if Minnesota doesn't go as far as they want to go into their postseason. I'm sure that they will go far, though, considering they're ranked number 1 right now in Division I. So, but I think, guys, if you're looking at Matthew Nyes saying, well, he could be the dark horse here for the Leafs, I don't see it, and I think a lot of other people don't see it that way.
Well, I'd rather see him, and I've said this a few times now, I'd like to see him come in, maybe get a cup of coffee on the 3rd or 4th line just to get his feet wet. I don't need him to be anything more than that, just to show up and get a chance, maybe give some guys a couple of nights off towards the end of the season if his team does not go deep. But I'm of the same ilk to say that you should take your time. Don't shell-shock the kid. The last guy we shell-shocked took a long time to get rolling, and that was Luke Schenn.
Yeah, you can't do that. And, think all the way. I mean, so, they win the Frozen Four. I think the title game is on April 8th. And after that, I believe, again, the schedule not in front of me, I think the Leafs have 3 games left. They're all on the road, 2 in Florida and 1 in New York. So by then, Sheldon Keefe, I don't think he's really too worried about getting a kid in at that point. You want to have your maybe if they know where they're going to be in that first round, if they have home ice clinched by then, but they're still fighting for it. I don't see why you put Nyes into that type of situation because it's unfair to the kid. And at least now, as it stands, if there are no injuries, guys, they have in the forward group, it'd be also unfair to look at any one of those 12 and take him out. So you could give that guy that type of look in such an intensive week. So again, we'll see how it goes. Maybe he gets up here earlier. Maybe Minnesota's season doesn't end the way that they want. But I'll just go back to what Dubas was saying to us on, I think it was February 9th or 10th, sometime around there. Just temper it a bit because it is going to take him some time. And, it's a much different player, but even a guy like Nick Abruzzese coming up last year, getting a look, clear pretty much right away. This guy needs at least a whole year in the American Hockey League before he can really think about coming into the NHL and doing something. And that's what he's had. So, we'll have to see. But Nyes is going to be here one day. I think we know that. He's going to make an impact one day. I just don't see it in the next few months.
Well, the thing that I want to know then beyond this is the Maple Leafs now, you look at their roster and the construction that's going to be done here. Yeah. Who do you think or what do you think Kyle Dubas is going to do next? Is it bringing someone more in while moving bodies out? So just per se, throw this one out there hypothetically, a Kerfoot to Vancouver, and you bring back a cheap Luke Schenn, somehow, some way. Is that what he's going to do? Or is it purely now going to be moving something off this roster to make all the new pieces fit, and that's it?
Well, it could, but, if they can make it work some other way, then the saying goes, you can never have too much depth. The Leafs don't have a ton of forwards under contract next season. Of course, their integral guys are. And, in a perfect world, even players of Engvall, Ilk, and Kerfoot, all guys are going to be unrestricted. You want to see them go out the door and get nothing in return. Well, no, not necessarily, but you still need that depth. And, that scenario could happen, Jamie, if they do decide to get a defenseman type. I think Luke Schenn would be a good depth guy for them. I don't think there's any argument there. I mean, now getting a guy like McCabe, unless there are injuries, if you acquire a Luke Schenn, you're not going to be asking him to do more than he can do. And I think that's important. You're not going to have to run him out there every other night once the playoffs start, if it even gets to that, if they acquire him. So there is that to consider. You know, whether, like I said, whether they look at it and say, okay, well, actually, we do like our depth. We've got Pontus Holmberg with the Marlies. If we trade, you know, a Kerfoot or an Engvall, he can then come back up and be part of it. There are lots of moving parts here for them in that regard. But, you know, like I said, Kyle's biggest things are done. And, you know, we'll have to see how the next few days play out. But their roster, I would like to think, is more or less set. At least certainly the vital pieces of it are.
So just to be clear, fireworks-wise, for guys coming into the Maple Leafs, you pretty much think the Maple Leafs have done their heavy lifting. The moves that they have gotten done are the ones that'll be pretty much on the stamp book come the end of trade deadline.
Yeah, I don't know what else you'd do now, right? Because then, you know, if you're looking at anything more significant, then, you know, something significant has to. And guys, remember too, I mean, you know, a lot of the big pieces are off the board, and
Yep.
you know, we're kind of joking about what's going to be left for Friday for the talking heads to discuss. I mean, not going to be a heck of a lot, especially if Patrick Kane lines up with the New York Rangers before then, or even if he does, and even if it does happen Friday, we all knew it was coming anyway. So a lot of those bigger moves across the league have been made, and you know, Kyle Dubas made 2 of them, and like I say, there's little to argue with in the 2 big moves that he has made now.
Now everybody's talking about Kyle Dubas needing to make that hallmark move for his resume. Obviously, I don't really think he cares about his resume. I think he cares about getting this team to where it needs to be, which is the promised land of a Stanley Cup. But these are 2 big moves on his resume. Ryan O'Reilly, Noah Shari, Sam Lafferty, now Jake McCabe. And the latter move has guys sticking around for next season and beyond in the terms of McCabe. I'm wondering for you, do these really add to, I guess, whatever lore you want to have for Kyle Dubas? And if you are the Maple Leafs, this is a guy that I would say I don't want to see walk at the end of the season.
Ooh, in Dubas?
Yeah.
You can't make that call now. You can't make that call until the spring. I think that's just my opinion on it, but I think a lot of people would agree with that. You know, obviously there was some, whether it was Brendan Shanahan or the board, there was some idea that let's see what this guy can do in the last year of the deal, because they haven't won yet under him, let alone a playoff round or anything else. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. You know, what will be the bar, guys, for him to keep his job? Will it be 1 playoff round? I don't know about that. Will it be 2? We don't know until the spring starts. But the way I wrote it today was he's done all he can at this point now to put the Leafs in a good position, and for that he can hold up his head high. Again, that's today. If they lose to Tampa in the first round, then, you know, he's going to be, you talk about his resume, he's going to be updating it over the summer if he doesn't, you know, get a job sometime around the draft or something. So I think he'll be gone. But, you know, let's get to the playoffs, I think, before we make that final judgment on him.
Terry, you brought up, like, the Leafs are playing Tampa. Like, what are your thoughts on the playoffs? Do they need to go back to the 1-8 format? Or, like, I saw a tweet today showing that even if they were doing the 1-8, they'd still be playing Tampa. But, like, is this ridiculous, or should we go back to the 1-8?
I'd go back to the 1-8.
Yeah.
You know, it's a coincidence, I think, that if you go that way, the Leafs are still playing Tampa. But, you know, like we know, two Stanley Cup contending caliber teams are probably going to be out in the first round in the East.
Yep.
Yep. And right now, guys, I think, you know, the last I looked at the standings earlier today, you know, the each of the top 6 teams in the East would be points wise the top team in the Western Conference right now. So we've seen the power shift from the East to West. You know, I guess it depends how you're looking at it, but yeah, the way that the Leafs Atlantic Division boils down, the top 3 teams are so good. Yeah, I'd like to see them go back to 1-8, but better chance of seeing those top 4 teams move on. But you know, the fact of the matter is, some really good hockey teams are not going to be playing past, you know, the end of April, and that's too bad. But this is, I hate to say it, but this is what we have right now. And from the NHL standpoint, there doesn't seem to be much appetite for changing it. So this is going to be it going forward. But either way, you know, one of 8. You know, the Leafs are within the Atlantic and the 2-3 play Tampa, get past. I think Kyle Dubas said today, guys, too, was one of the things he said during his availability was, look, we should relish this. Let's go and embrace it. Let's go and embrace having to get through these walls to get where we want to be. And, it's on the players to get that done now.
No, it definitely is. Well, one question I want to ask now, we talked about this via email, but I want to get it out here. The construction of the Leafs defense now. You talked about maybe Rasmus Sandin being the guy to sit. A lot of people, for their own reasons, I don't agree with it all the time, want Justin Hall to be that guy. For you, what is the optimal Leafs defense core given the players that they have? And you can include a Jordy Ben in there if you want to as well.
Yeah, I don't think I'd include Jordy Ben. I wouldn't include Connor Timmins either. I like a lot of what Connor Timmins does, but there has to be defensive improvements made by him. And, he's not an overly old guy. We get that. But, it's hard to say how it's going to all boil down. Like I said about earlier, Keith has a luxury now of figuring this out. And is it a Sandin who physically can he stand up to the rigors of playing in the playoffs? We'll have to see. Perhaps that decision is made before we get to the playoffs. But I thought he's done well at times this year when he's been has had added responsibilities. Look, the Leafs defense core as a whole got through those injuries to Muzzin and Morgan Riley and TJ Brody quite well. There was no team going over a cliff. In fact, that's the opposite happened. They really buckled down and played good hockey, below their own blue line. So I understand that the playoffs are a different kettle of fish and everything, but whether it's a Sandin or a Hall, we'll have to see. Again, how it starts is not how it's necessarily going to end. And how it starts is not necessarily going to be, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in. Mark Giordano, if you're looking at him and saying, okay, we're going to expect you to go play every other night with intensity that's a lot higher than it was his 382 games of regular season, can he do that every night? So if he can't, and he does need a night off, does it then become a Sandin come into the lineup or Justin Hall, whoever it is? I think the other good thing, too, guys, that the Leafs have been able to get through this year with working through the injuries is I kind of alluded to it before, is Keith's been able to look through or go through a lot of pairings, work a lot of pairings, have basically everyone with everyone at some point, and see what's worked. Now there's going to be a little bit more of that with Jake McCabe. I would imagine that whoever McCabe plays with on Wednesday, that's not going to be the same thing for the final 30 games or whatever it is. Perhaps he gets to look to somebody else, and Keith can go that way. But to the original question, Jamie, I would think it would be a Hall or a Sandin, but that's to be determined. And, if you're the Leafs right now, as much as you like your depth, you keep your fingers crossed that no one gets hurt, and you have a full complement of guys going into game one of the first round.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Now, obviously, the forward complement, I know Pete probably wants this answer as well. We see Ryan O'Reilly playing with, Mitch Marner and Willie Nylander, John Tavares. Is the optimal forward group having Ryan O'Reilly out of your top six or in your top six, in your opinion?
Well, listen, if he's in your top six, then you have two strong centers behind him in Kampf and Achari, right? And so there's that option. If he's out of it, then then he bumps one of those guys to the wing ostensibly, and he's your third line center, and that makes that up the middle for the Leafs even more ramrod straight than it would be, with the other two guys. But again, it's interesting. I kind of thought they would go to him right away as that third line guy and figure that out. But I like what Keith has done here. I think we're making too much of this John Tavares moving to the wing. I think, like Keith said to us in Buffalo last week, guys, at the end of the day, Tavares is going to be back in the middle. And if that's the case, then I would assume that O'Reilly is down to the third line. But, John Tavares has been around. He's played 1,000 games. I think he's made a fine adjustment to the wing. And right now it's working. And, Keith talked about the other day about doing this in segments and trying guys out in segments, whether it's 4 or 5 games. So I think we'll still see O'Reilly in the middle, Tavares on the left, Nylander on the right, and of course keeping Matthews, Marner, and Bunting together after what they did last night in Seattle. So, but as far as the optimum goes, Jimmy, it's I think it's almost one of those things where if O'Reilly's on the second line center or the third line, you can't lose either way. because you move your depth pieces around. Now, if he's down on that third line, then you have the issue of, well, who becomes, Tavares are back to the second line center, who becomes that winger up there? Are you really comfortable with Kerfoot in your top six? I don't know about that, but right now the way that it looks and the way that third line looks now, Lafferty's going to get in there somehow. I think that one of Engvall or Aston Reese will come out of the lineup. That strengthens that group. I mean, one thing you don't want to sleep on Lafferty too is kind of what Archari brings. It's not just that depth guy, but also there's a bit of a scoring touch there. Yep. And certainly a lot more than Zach Aston Reese has. All due respect to the player, he just doesn't have that knack. These two new guys do. So that's key as well. But O'Reilly at 2C or 3C, either one is a benefit for the Leafs. Either one, makes them better than they were before. Because now you have Tavares in the wing, and he's doing that well, and those things are clicking. So, again, lots of time for Keith to figure this out.
No, definitely. I know Pete's got the next question up here. So, Pete, what's up?
I saw your tweet today. Leafs, this just in, Kyle Dubas really is all in. So I want to know what, if you were to give him a grade right now, what would you grade him based on this team right now?
On the team right now, are they in fourth place overall?
Yeah.
And he's just made two significant trades without taking one off the roster. Like I would have given him an A at the end of the regular season last year as well. So, the things that he's done have worked. I mean, now, one guy we haven't talked about in this whole conversation could be the linchpin to everything, and that's Ilya Samsonov.
Yep.
He has to keep playing the way that he does. And, to get back to your question, Pete, Dubas hedged his bets last summer on Samsonov and Murray rediscovering their games and, possibly leaving a little bit of room open for the idea that they were going to be injured at some point because they both have those histories. Well, we've seen that now. But to me, Samsonov has taken over as the number one. I think you want to keep him in this groove in the last couple of months. Don't overplay him. Keep him in that groove. And, Murray going to get in there at some point, but I just like the job that Samsonov has done. I think he deserves that opportunity. And, if worse comes to worse, you have Joseph Wall as a third option. I don't think the Leafs are going to be looking at goalie insurance the rest of the week. I don't think that would be prudent for them. They have what they have, and you go forward with it. So, to get back to your question about what grade would you give, he's looking pretty good right now with the goaltending too, right?
Yep.
So, Samsonov has been really good, really solid for them. Obviously a boost to him to get a win on the road last night, but I just think that home away thing is a little bit of an aberration. I wouldn't worry about it too much. But Dubas has to get a good grade right now, a high one, an A grade, with 2 months to go in the regular season. Maybe that's a different answer, starting in a month and a half. Perhaps not, but like I said, they're top 5 in the league. They're doing a lot of things well. Nylander's having a great season. All these guys are doing so many good things, and they've managed to get through the injuries. And like I said, he makes 2 trades that you don't delete anybody off the roster, and everything still lines up financially.
No, it definitely does. Well, the last one I want to ask you here before we let you go, I know you got something to get to, my friend. The Maple Leafs, long for the playoffs here in the first round, have been called a soft team, a pushover team, a team that really, doesn't stack up well to the physical play, even though to me, they really took Tampa to the brink last year. I know they didn't get the job done, but they still did not give up an inch, in my opinion. Nick Paul scored 2 goals in Game 7, and that's what everybody hangs their hat on. But I want to ask you, with the moves the Leafs have added, Ryan O'Reilly, Noel Acciari, Sam Lafferty, Jake McCabe, and then, of course, the own playoff scars that these Maple Leafs have accrued over the few years, I'm wondering, do these Leafs have now, in your eyes, and maybe many others, the toughness to go up against the Tampas, who have an absolute prickish bottom 6, to put it nicely?
Yeah, well, I think the moves that Kyle Dubas has made in the past 2 weeks have addressed those things. Ryan O'Reilly is less than 4 years off his Conn trophy.
Yep.
Does he move at the same speed that he did then, or even, years ago. Well, everyone ages. I mean, that catches up to you a bit, but he's still a hell of an effective player, and he still has that experience. I mean, we talked about, Jake Muzzin and Matt Murray and their cup wins guys. Well, Ryan O'Reilly's a lot more fresh, and he was the impact that he had on that Blues run was obvious, was huge. So, I just think there's a little more of that. Noel Cherry has that background as well in Boston, and we know what he did against the Leafs a few times once the playoffs started.
Yep,
he's got that flavor to him. McCabe doesn't, because he hasn't played in the playoffs. He's not in the playoffs, but he has that approach. So yeah, I think they are better off in that way. And you're right, Jamie. I agree with you completely. But by no means are the Maple Leafs run out of the building by the Tampa Bay Lightning last night.
no.
We said at the time, yeah, they lose. They're up in Game 6. They lose Game 7 at home. Fact of the matter is, there was no shame in losing to the team at the time was the defending two-time Stanley Cup champion. Now, the pain last year for the Leafs was, a lot of us thought, and they might have thought too, that had they got past Tampa, they probably were on their way. They get that mental hurdle is gone. Whether they had acknowledged it even being there, of course, it's got to be a bit of the thinking. That's gone. You can just go out and play hockey and do what you know how to do and do it to the best of your ability. And they probably, I thought they would have gone all the way last spring, but didn't happen. But yeah, I think that at some point those scars have to amount to something. A, and then B, coupled with the players that Dubas has added, they've all got that little bit of a thing to them. Lafferty too. It's got a bit of an edge to him. Cherry has that, and like I've already said, McCabe and O'Reilly, I think are going to bring that in spades. So yeah, I think they are a little more prepared for it than they were a year ago and 2 weeks ago.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to seeing what the Toronto Maple Leafs can do, obviously, in the playoffs. I want to get you back on after the trade deadline and the dust settles a little bit and we start to see some line combinations and defensive pairings and such. But Terry, I always want to say thank you very much. You're always so gracious with your time. I know you got a lot going on right now, so thank you for jumping on a big trade day and talking some Maple Leafs with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Always good to talk to you, and we'll get this video thing straightened out for the next one.
Thanks, Terry.
We'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Okay, guys. All right. Bye.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, if you were listening into the podcast there, that was Leafs reporter Terry Koshan breaking down the trade today with Chicago Blackhawks. Leafs getting Sam Lafferty and Jake McCabe. Number 28 will be Sam Lafferty. Taking Joey Anderson's number 2 will be Jake McCabe, which is pretty cool. Looking forward to both those guys getting in the lineup. Terry just said it, breaking news. They will be in the lineup Wednesday night against the Edmonton Oilers. Hopefully they get into town and get a practice in for tomorrow. Looking forward to what impact these guys can bring. Lots of people saying there still are more moves for the Maple Leafs to make here. We shall see.
There has to be. There has to be, James. They're not going to sit on. They're not going to sit on Matt Murray LTIR. There's no way. Like Terry just said, they're bringing him back in the lineup this week, James. They can't do it.
Much like Terry just said, though, the Rasmus Sandin injury last year, right before the deadline, opened the door up for them to keep things the way it was. So injuries, as Terry said, David Alter has said, and everyone who joins this show who works in the biz, they always tell us injuries have a way of making things work out. So we'll see what happens. Looking forward to the Edmonton game on Wednesday night now. Looking forward to the physical impact that these new players can have with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Leafs Nation, it is okay, no matter what realm you are in, for Leafs Nation to be excited, because this is exciting times. Let's run it back what's happened. Ryan O'Reilly, Noel Acciari, Sam Lafferty, Jake McCabe, added to the likes of Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, John Tavares, Michael Bunting, Morgan Riley, and the list goes on. Get fired up. The playoffs, they are a-coming. And the Leafs, well, they are prepared, and they don't spend 5 picks on one guy. They spread the wealth around the entire lineup. And now, Leafs Nation, we get to say, go Leafs, go!
Go Leafs, go, baby.
Leafs in 4, as Pete says.
Let's go 4, baby. That's all we need. Leafs in 4.
But it will be the Maple Leafs enjoying the second round. Book it. This team is ready to go. And I love the fact you see Austin Matthews getting with his boy Mitch Marner last night and starting to vroom the old engine back up. And I think things will be humming because finally we have a top 6 that rivals any in the NHL. And now a bottom 6 that is just a plain old asshole to play against. Whether it's Zach Aston Reese, which I think he will be in the lineup come the playoffs. He's a guy that you want in there physical. Noel Shari, Sam Lafferty, just brought in, both physical. Then they're playing with guys who can win the draw. David Kampf, hello, how you doing? Okay, this team is going to be something. Can't wait to see it. But ladies and gentlemen, for myself and Mr. Pete the Heat, go follow him over on TikTok and on Twitter. This has been a very special edition of Offside Hockey Talk with our guy Terry Koshan. And you know what the catchphrase is. It's Offside Hockey Talk, where the Maple Leafs and hockey come to talk.